Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear viewers to the show, think about it. Today we're going to be talking about a certain situation that has occurred, and now it's a dilemma. Now, most of our research that we have in front of us and most of this data that we have comes from the younger generation. This includes the millennials and this includes people from Generation Z. So I'm talking about anybody basically born after 1984 and after. With me today on the show is a wonderful guest. He was with us last week as well. And he is an educator, one of a kind, mashallah. He knows what he talks about. He makes me feel more wise about myself as well, alhamdulillah. Welcome with me, Brother Ghassan Iqbal. How are you today?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for being here.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So our current dilemma today that we're talking about is the generation gap. Now we've heard generation gap quite a few times, but with me I have some information that I want to give a shout out to grade 10 and grade 12 students of Safa and Marwa Islamic School. These concerns, these thoughts, these very things that stand in front of me come firsthand from Generation Z. So shout out to all of you. Thank you very much for giving us the idea. Thank you very much for giving us valuable input for the show as well. And we'll try to talk about it and see what's happening. The main idea of this show is to give a bit of enlightenment to the younger generation as well as the older one to understand how we could do things better, inshallah. The first point that I'd like to talk about is respect. So this is something that's quite frustrating for older generation, older people. So Ghassan, what I'd like to tell you is that I have seen a lot of people, my own colleagues at work, previously where I've worked as well, different people that I've met, older people, you know, like aunts and uncles, and they've always mentioned or they've always had this complaint that children today don't know how to respect their elders. So I tried to get to the bottom of it myself, and I sat down with my own class, I sat down with a group of young minds, and I asked them, what does respect mean to you? And why is it that you do this? And I realized that they said that they're not heard. Their opinions aren't valued. They're always told that you're young or you don't understand. They're brushed off, basically. Now, obviously, this is coming off the strength of about 9 to 10 different individuals who are young and in that capacity. But it's also come about that maybe, just maybe, our young minds don't know what respect means in the eyes of elders, or even in the eyes of Islam, our beautiful religion. So I have a small advice, and inshallah Brother Ghassan is going to add to this. At any moment when you see an elder, your guardian, your parent, your grandparent, your aunt, your uncle, somebody who's older than you obviously, if you see them address you, talk to you, and they look displeased, they're not pleased, they look disappointed, as in they didn't expect you to do something, or they look angry. Their tone shows that they're expressing a form of anger to you. These are three situations when adults expect young minds to listen. And at that time, the worst thing you could do is respond back. Because if you respond back at that time, that is a sign of disrespect. It's not that you're not allowed to have opinions. No. You're allowed to have opinions. You're allowed to speak your mind. But you pick your moments and things. At times when you have an opinion, you don't share it because it might not be wise to share it at that time. Well, at this time, you're not supposed to talk back. That's what talk back means. It doesn't mean you're having a conversation, you're laughing with your father, and your father says something to you, and you say something to him, and your father says, you're talking back to me. That doesn't happen that way. It doesn't work that way. It's when you see that someone's trying to give you some form of information or trying to guide you. What do you think about that, Brother Ghassan?
I think that is an absolutely valid point. And because we're addressing the youth with this advice, I want to say this is coming from someone who absolutely believes that the youth deserves respect. But at that point, we should realize that this older person has lived many more years than us. And whatever they have to say is going to have a value to it. That information, that knowledge is going to be valuable. And in that moment, it is our time to listen, to learn, and to take that valuable information in, rather than trying to take the stage and trying to be the one who's speaking. So just remember, that is something of benefit to you. This person thinks that they can benefit you, and absolutely you can gain benefit from what they have to say.
No doubt, no doubt. Elders are people who've had a lifetime of experience as compared to us, as compared to young people, and they're only looking out for you. And obviously, whatever they tell you has nothing to do with spite. It has nothing to do with trying to tame you. It's more about trying to make you into better versions and better human beings, making you into gentlemen, making you into ladies, making you into people who can conduct yourself well enough for the world to respect you as well. With that, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back with a few more points. So stay tuned and keep thinking about it.
अगर आपका ख्वाब कनाडा में तालीम हासिल करने का है या कनाडा में मुकाम हासिल करने का इरादा है, तो आजू इंटरनेशनल का नाम याद रखें। हम आपकी रहनुमाई करेंगे। स्टडी परमिट्स इंटरनेशनल स्टूडेंट्स के लिए, पोस्ट ग्रेजुएशन वर्क परमिट, प्रोविंशियल नॉमिनी प्रोग्राम और यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ रजाइना में स्टूडेंट्स के लिए कई सारी स्कॉलरशिप्स दिलाने में मदद भी करते हैं और कई सारी सर्विसेज में सहूलियत का जज्बा और मदद दिलाने का मद्दा रखते हैं। आजू इंटरनेशनल को बनाए आपका अजीज हमसफर। आज ही ईमेल करें info@azu.ca या कॉल करें 365-366-3231 पर। आवाज इंटरटेनमेंट के कस्टमर्स को मिलेगी खास सहूलियत। आजू इंटरनेशनल, हमारी कोशिश, आपकी कामयाबी।
Welcome to City Pro Realty. We are 100% Canadian family-owned real estate brokerage. If you are thinking of buying or selling residential or commercial real estate, think of us. Call us. We are one-stop solution provider for your real estate needs. Our passion is real estate. Your success is our priority. Our commission plans to meet your budget. Your satisfaction is guaranteed. A family serving family. To search for sale properties and free reports, visit www.citypro.com.
Check it for Popeyes. Love that chicken from Popeyes. Love that chicken from Popeyes.
मेविस और बटानिया के इंटरसेक्शन पे तशरीफ लाइए अल कबाब टेक आउट ग्रिल एंड केटरिंग,
जहां आपको मिलेंगे बेहतरीन पाकिस्तानी और इंडियन कुजीन, डेली स्पेशल और पार्टी ट्रेस, बेहतरीन बारबेक्यू, बिहारी कबाब, चिकन टिक्का और मिक्स बारबेक्यू प्लेटर। इसके अलावा बीफ, चिकन और वेजी की बेहतरीन वैरायटी। तो आज ही तशरीफ लाइए अल कबाब ग्रिल एंड टेक आउट, मेविस और बैटानिया के इंटरसेक्शन पर। टेलीफोन नंबर 9058191222।
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back from the break. We're talking about the generation gap, and we just covered a point about respect. So to move on from this, I have a few other points that have been mentioned, and from these, I'd like to mention two together. Number one is empathy. There are some issues with empathy. That's what the young generation feels. They feel as though that when they're going through an issue, a problem, people who are of the older generation, they're adults, they're guardians, they feel as though these guardians don't understand our pain. They understand that they might have had a difficult life. They understand that they might have had a world of experience that they went through, struggles that they went through. But with a child and with somebody here, even in Islam it says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't test a soul for more than what it can bear. So these children that are going through problems, they have mental issues, they need support, and they go and they talk to their parents brush them off. Their parents tell them, what are you talking about? What kind of mental issue are you talking about? The only mental problem is that you're paranoid. The only mental problem is that you're not serious, you're lazy, you're this. And they start throwing a few labels, which are commonly used nowadays, towards the younger generation. But the younger generation at the same time says that it's not that we deny that elders have been through a lot of struggle or strife or had a difficult life. It's that back in the day, there was no term when a child was hyperactive and couldn't have more than a 5-second or 5-minute attention span, which is known as ADHD today. Back then, people were not diagnosed with autism. Back then, there was no medication, no psychologist or behavioral specialist that kids used to go to that used to actually benefit and help them. Because these exact career paths and these professionals that exist today exist for a reason. You go to university, you can get a PhD in psychology. You can get a PhD in child psychology, behavior, cognitive awareness, psychoanalysis, and the list goes on. So these subjects are definitely valid where they are. But they feel as though the older generation doesn't quite get that. And sometimes instead of supporting them, having that empathy, they end up blaming or compounding to the issues that they have. What's your take on that, Ghassan?
Like you mentioned, there's all these professions, these certifications, these labels, ADHD, autism, etc., etc., etc. And I was having a conversation with one of my younger relatives. He's maybe 11, 12 years old. And I was just talking to him casually. What do you like? What do you do in school? What kind of music do you like listening to? And he told me, the response he gave me, it shocked me. He said, no adult has ever spoken to me like this. So what we end up doing as adults or people who look at the youth, we say, we know what their problem is. Let's talk about their attention span. Let's talk about the issues that are in their environment, all of these things. But we don't actually talk to them to see what they want. And all of these things like ADHD, autism, they can be compounded by the fact that they're not getting the attention from people, so their own attention is going towards seeking that correction or that agreement, to find that satisfaction of I have attention, I'm receiving something from my environment, because they're not getting it from their adults. They're not getting it from the people around them that have that experience to help them with whatever problems that they actually have.
Subhanallah. Now, this is something that's directed towards our parents who are watching this today. Listen, yes, there were not a lot of terminologies or terms given or labels given to different things that might have existed in the past. With new times, new viruses come out. COVID, subhanAllah, this pandemic that took place, it never existed before, did it? Sure, there were bubonic plagues and other things that took place, but H1N1, the bird flu, swine flu, all these things, these are new concocted viruses that come up. So obviously, in a new era where everything is new, there's a new approach to dealing with your children. Yes, you have a father, son, mother, daughter, parent-child barrier there, and there should be respect. We already talked about that, and we covered that. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't show empathy to your children. And we're not saying that all parents don't, but we're saying those parents who don't really understand this, they need to take the time out to sit down with their kids and talk to them. At least understand what your child thinks, what his or her preferences are, whether or not they need some support. Sometimes the only support they need is a shoulder to rest on, a shoulder to, kind of lean on. That's the only thing they need. But even that isn't given, especially in today's fast-paced world, which brings me to my third point of today, which is technology. Now, a lot of elder people, a lot of, the older generation, they claim that the young generation of today, millennials and Generation Z, are impatient. And they say that they cannot wait for things. They're too impatient. And impatience kills you when you are working to make progress. 6 months, you're not going to achieve anything. You have to give it time and stuff, and relationships. They say these two things suffer if you are impatient. And they say that this is something that children are going through, and children are impatient, children are this and that. Now, to be honest with you, I was of the same opinion. But then I tried to look at the culprit behind this impatience, and that is technology. You see, the same parents who make this complaint sometimes when they're too busy, when they're working, or when they're at home and they just don't want anybody to bother them, they put the mobile phone, they take a gadget that has Wi-Fi in it or something, or YouTube or any other kind of social media outlet or something, and they put it in front of the child's face. So what you've done is you've fed them the recipe for impatience. That's what you've done. And now when the recipe is cooked out and you've got your meal in front of you, which is exactly how you've made it, you're complaining. Now, that's pretty much where I stand now. It might be a bit harsh. People might think that, what are you saying? But my question is that, can we work to make children who have become impatient? No fault of their own, by the way. I think there's no fault of their own over here. They've grown up in a society and an environment where things are instantaneous. Can we help them grow patience? Can we help them kind of not just tone it down, but to be able to give things time and appreciate things for what they are and move with it progressively? Can we do that?
Absolutely. To quote you, you said, we fed them the recipe. It's like saying that you can't blame the gun for killing someone, you blame the person who, pulled
Exactly.
the trigger.
Exactly.
So in that sense, just like we fed them the recipe towards this instant gratification or this quick consumption of media and all of these things, we need to bring in what we had before. It was social interactions. Rather than sitting your kids in front of the TV so that you can do your own thing, spend time with them and have conversations with them. And that alone will develop a sense of patience. Rather than instantly seeing that full message, they will learn to have a full conversation, to wait for the other person to speak, to wait for themselves to speak, right? They don't always have that turn. And that alone, just through conversation, through the small part or habit in their life of communication, it'll slowly bring patience into their life, into their other activities.
So basically, I think the advice to take away from here is that everybody at home, all you parents and everybody who's a guardian, who's taking care of children, even if you're older siblings and and you've got your head on right, mashallah, and you're going forward with it, take time out to communicate a discussion point where you sit down and you talk to the person, to the young mind, to understand exactly what he or she is going through and kind of give them that mannerism, have them feed off. We already mirror from the time we're born, from the time we start saying mama and baba, and we actually understand for the 1,000th time after we've said it, that okay, this person is Baba and this person is Mama. They mirror off you, so I guess mannerisms can be mirrored as well. But this leads us to the last point that I want to discuss today, and that is easy getaways or easy way outs. Now with impatience, with technology, with everything, a lot of the young minds that we have today try to look for an easy solution to a problem. Whether it be their education, they want to pick easy subjects. When they want to go to university, it's like, what's the easiest subject in which I can get an admission in McMaster's in, or in McGill in, or in Harvard in, or in Oxford or Cambridge in. And they're going for that. They're looking for the easy option, easy option, easy option. If I take this route to work, or if I do this, it starts with something very simple, as in, if I drive to work and I take the 401, or if I take the 407, this is how much time I will save, and this is what I will do. But it ends up becoming something that affects your very productivity, because you're looking for something easy, easy, easy. Now, something that my father always used to say, which I'd like to bring up over here, is that if you try to find the easy way, and you keep trying to find the easy way out, there will come a day when there won't be an easy way out, because everything would have become difficult. What's your take on that?
So when we develop ourselves off of the easy way out, we're basically building foundations that are weak. Because when you build something and you build it really quickly, without thinking, without putting effort into it, it's very likely to collapse. You can build a house with trees you just cut, but eventually you'll have problems with termites, with rotting. But if you take the time to process that wood and then to use those supports and go through all the materials and everything that you need to do it, you have stronger supports. And it will last. That satisfaction that you spent all that time you spent into something will last. The easy way out will only give you a moment of satisfaction, and then it will collapse and you will no longer have it anymore.
But do you think that a lot of the young generation today is looking for an easy way out? I mean, obviously this is opinions and kind of a feedback that I got from a group of young minds. But do you think across the board that might be the case? Obviously, we're not labeling everybody, but with, let's say, a majority of the young minds of today?
Because of things like technology and these things that are coming, we get the quick fix, but we realize that it's just momentary. But other people who don't have the experience of putting in that time and effort towards something, they don't. So the youth is actually seeing this also because of the older generations, things like when you have credit cards, if you don't have money, you can still purchase something. It's an easy way out, right? Rather than working for that money. And it trickles down to the youth. And that is what our youth sees through that materialistic lens, that we're just trying to get things. We need to have things. We don't need to work towards things. We need to have them. And that is what the accomplishment is. And they lose that satisfaction through effort of gaining, through the journey.
But that would mean that when they actually have it,
Excuse me, you could continue for more 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes if you want. And
so that would mean when they actually have it, they might not appreciate it once they have it, because they haven't gone through the struggle, because they haven't actually seen what the value of hard work was. They haven't put the time in. They haven't put the effort in, the mind in, the energy, the physical energy as well. They haven't put that in. So that means that if they've got it, it's with them, I have to have it, then even when they do have it, it's never going to be enough. It's never going to be satisfying or fulfilling, right?
Absolutely. There's no attachment to it because there's no value, no effort, nothing spent to have earned it. So therefore, its value is reduced in that sense, that we have not done anything for this.
And when we talk about that, I mean, you mentioned this before, when we talk about respect and the fact that elders have a lifetime of experience behind them and whatever. I mean, I should have mentioned this at that time too, but it's definitely better late than never. So experience itself. Now, we've talked about back and forth about the issues that young minds might have towards older people and how the older peoples might have an issue towards the younger people. We're trying to bridge that gap right now, that generation gap that we're talking about. The experience of older people. Now, it very often happens. It happened to me when I was younger. It happens to me till date at times. And I believe that it might happen with my own son and my daughter. It happens at school as well. And I've seen this as well, and I've got feedback on this too. That sometimes when children are doing something, when a young mind is doing something, in their mind they know what the system is, they know how it's going to run, and it's something that's acceptable, and it's a pretty standard, or not standard, but a normal way to move forward. And when they're adopting a certain method to do something, or they adopt a certain, let's say, item, whether it be a materialistic item, whether it be an equipment that they're using, something of the sort, people get angry. The older generation might get angry that why did you do this in this way, and why did you do that in that way, and you're questioning yourself. The young minds question themselves, is this even something to get angry over? Why are they getting angry at me? Now, what happens is that these young minds are confused of why a generation older than them is expressing disappointment, anger, or basically they're not pleased with them or the decision that they've taken. It could very well be that the older people of the older generation might not be aware of the new method, and once given that awareness or that knowledge, it might go away, which brings us back to communication and how communication is effective. But it also might come to how young people do not value the experience of the older generation. They look at their fathers or their mothers and like, they don't know. They think everything that comes out of an older generation person's mouth, every piece of guidance that comes out, is outdated. Do you think that's a phenomenon that might have caught on nowadays and people actually see it and it's visible to see?
Definitely something that's visible. We don't respect our elders' opinions because we think that they were raised, they lived in a generation, in a time, in a world that's gone past, and there's some validity to that. But we need to realize that the walls of experience that are erected around them, some of those walls are still relevant to us. And if we do not listen to everything that they have to say, then we will miss many of those walls of experience that we need to limit our vision from things that will not benefit us, that we're receiving from our elders.
So this is something for the young generation as well. A little bit of advice. We've been throwing advice to both sides of the generations to bridge the gap, inshallah. And basically, to all those young minds, sometimes even if you disagree with what someone says who's older than you, whether it be your guardian, your parent, your uncle, some aunt, maybe even like a family friend, your father's friend who wants to give you some advice, you in no way have to agree to everything. But you in every way have to respect everything that's coming out of someone else's mouth. So at that moment, for this specific thing, let the elder person finish what they're trying to tell you. First off, you might actually listen if you let them finish instead of thinking about what I'm going to say. Because sometimes, believe it or not, we're not listening, we're waiting for someone to finish just so we could speak. So when your elder is finished, you can actually respond by this phrase. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you for your understanding, or thank you for teaching me that. May I add something? May I say something? Use the complete phrase. Thank you for explaining that to me. Can I say something to you? Can I add something to it? Can I tell you how I feel right now? If you just add this phrase, it has a whole different light on how you're approaching it. And probably this might actually end up bridging that gap of communication as well. Because young people would communicate in a certain way. Obviously, you've grown up in a certain time, in a certain era. There's different colloquialisms, different slangs that people use, a different language that is acceptable in society. And the previous generation had their own. And so on in the past, if you go, it continues that way. So I want to throw that in. And with that, leadership is the last point I want to talk about today. What can you tell me, Rossano? I'd like to pick your brain on this. leadership in the young generation today. How much do we see it? Is it seen? Can it be harnessed? And do you think young people today genuinely have leadership skills without proper communication with adults and with technology and the fast-paced era that we're going through?
We're really losing that capacity for leadership in our youth because they are not communicating as much. They're not communicating with as much diverse people. And when they're communicating through things like technology, it's not allowing them to develop the relationships and the understanding that leads to qualities of leadership. So as I was saying before, it's the capacity is there, but the youth, they're not getting the situations, the communication with other people, because leadership is all about leading people. They're not getting those interactions with a diverse group of people that they can be able to learn the different kinds of skills they need to deal with different people. And on the other end, they're lacking those role models of leadership. And it comes back down to communication. Leaders listen just as much as they speak, just as much as they orchestrate things, just as much as they command. They are, in a sense, commanded by the people because they listen to what their needs are, what their wants are, and what their feelings and emotions are. And when we come back to the idea of listening to the youth and hearing them out, what they need, what their problems are, we're lacking in that.
Mm-hmm. So what we've actually ended up understanding today is that with all these different points mentioned, communication is the highlight of what is missing. And that would basically lead us to understanding that more communication needs to take place, but what type of communication? Clear communication. Communication that has an assigned time. Communication where you're sitting down for at least half an hour, if not half an hour, 20 minutes, where you're sitting down and you're giving that undivided attention to that young mind, and that young mind is giving you that undivided attention as well to the older generation. And you're talking about a certain topic or what it is, and you're actually bouncing ideas off each other. You're asking each other what your opinion is towards a particular topic, a particular subject, where you can grow and expand your way of thinking together. And I think that is one thing that would definitely bridge the gap that's there. But with that, I think tools such as technology and what they've brought in, small lessons such as communication in regards to respect, in regards to empathy, in regards to, let's say, value as well. Like older people, they value things a bit differently as younger people value things a bit differently. I think that all of these things need to be looked at with much more rigor, with caution, and should be dealt with in a way that helps the young minds as well as the older generation. Because this isn't just a young generation problem. This is across the board. So before we end up wrapping up the show and everything, Brother Ghassan, please do share some views of whatever we've discussed today. I know it was a bit fast-paced today as well, just like our young generation likes it, inshallah. So please do give our beautiful guests, and we're going to give our beautiful guests a send-off right now. Please share some last views with our viewers.
So the key to success for our relationship with one another as humanity is that we need to realize that everybody has something to offer, whether it be young or old. The youth need to realize that the elder generations, they have experience that we don't have, that we can use. And the older generations need to realize that the youth have creativity, and their lack of boundaries is what makes their inputs and their outlooks something that is to be valued, and for us to be adventurous when we've built the walls of experience to help us see beyond those walls, because that is what the mind of the youth is. It's boundless with creativity. And that's what I feel like we need to really implement and to explore in our lives.
Thank you very much, Jazakallahu Khairan, for being on the show yet again. It's always awesome having you on. And with that, a final word that I can share is that this show, as I said, was targeted at both generations, whether you be baby boomers, whether you're on Generation Z or Y and you're millennials. We can all take away something. First off, we need to understand what respect means in each other's eyes. We need to be able to follow basic human etiquettes and rules. And if we have that there, we're always supposed to be there to support each other. So parents, take out time for your kids. Kids, take out time for your parents. And inshallah, we'll be seeing a brighter future with great leaders come about. And till then, we'll see you next week. Think about it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.